So we're going to start with Frank Stella. Now, in 1959, he gained early immediate recognition with his series of coolly impersonal, black-striped paintings that turned the gestural brushwork and existential angst of abstract expressionism on its head. He would focus on formal elements of art making. Stella went on to create increasingly complex work that seemed to follow a natural progression of dynamicism, tactility, and scale. And this was a decisive departure from abstract expressionism. His black painting series, which we're looking at now, consisted of precisely delineated parallel black stripes produced by smoothly applying house paint. The striped pattern served as a regulating system that, in Stella's words, forced the illusionistic space out of the painting at a constant rate. Now, this device was intended to emphasize the flatness of the canvas and prompt the viewer's awareness of the painting as two-dimensional in nature, thereby overturning the notion of painting as a window onto the three-dimensional space that we see since the Renaissance. So he's showing us two-dimensional space, and he's creating a work where you can't get away from the fact that it is nothing more than two-dimensional space. Now, Stella was an early practitioner of non-representational painting. Rather than artwork alluding to an underlying meaning, emotion, or narrative, and has remained one to this day. So he's getting away from the representational ideas, just like with minimalism. But he's kind of the first. He's really setting that path, setting that movement in motion. He's working according to the principles of line, plane, volume, and point within space. So he's focusing on these basic elements of artwork, the sort of thing that we try and teach in a 2D design class or something along those lines. And he's focusing on the most basic elements of artwork: color, shape, and composition. So again, when you have something this simple, it must be right. The composition has to be right, your choice of color has to be right, and of course, the shape has to be right, and in Stella's case, consistent. And when it's inconsistent, be aware of the fact that someone's going to read into it. So he does a number of these pieces. There are 24 that he will do in a larger grouping. And we start, or the piece we're looking at, is Fahne Hoch, which I'm probably mispronouncing because I don't actually speak German. Now, this belongs to a group of 24 black paintings that brought the young Frank Stella instant art world notoriety. What appears at first to be white lines are actually bare, narrow spaces of unprimed canvas between the standard black bands. So he's not painting the white lines in, those are left behind. That's why you see some places, such as in this painting that we're looking at with him in the foreground, and you see some areas where those lines get closer. And it gives you the illusion of something else in the space, which of course we know can't actually be there. He also does this with massive canvases and generally with a house painter's brush. So very simple work, the sort of thing that anyone can do, and this universality is what speaks to the viewer. It's not about whether you can do it. When you look at it as a viewer, it's about seeing inside your own mind. Now, the painting here seems to project off the wall, asserting a presence, or what Stella calls its objectness. Now, this piece specifically refers to a German march called Hoist the Flag. So, he's trying to be non-referential in the painting, but the title is giving us something. So suddenly you can't look at that title without thinking of this German song about Hoist the Flag, which gets us into the Nazi Party's marching anthem, because it's taken from part of their marching anthem. Indeed, the painting's title, the cruciform configuration, and the flag-like proportions will call to mind not only Nazi banners, but the darkness and annihilation of the Holocaust. Wait a minute, we've just gone back into existentialism again. How did that happen? Well, we're right back to it. Remember, the scars of World War II will follow society even to modern day. We're still dealing with a lot of these issues. So the fact that Stella's bringing it up, now he's bringing it up in a different way, kind of looking at how can people do these horrific things, but he's still going back to that same source material. The phrase may also refer to raising the banner of a new aesthetic, one that marked a shift away from abstract expressionism and anticipated the geometry and rigor of minimalism. Because Stella isn't really a minimalist. He's kind of a proto-minimalist. He's sort of the father of the movement, but he's not entirely part of the movement. As we stand in front of this is a large piece. As we stand in front of this, your mind has very little to deal with. Because he went with neutral colors, black and white, we can't even pull a Rothko. We can't even sit there and go, oh, I'm concentrating on orange, and orange makes me feel happy. We're dealing with completely neutral elements. All we really have to deal with is the composition. And to interpret the composition, you're going to come up with your own judgments. And when you come up with those judgments, that is your interpretation. And it may not even be a strong judgment. You may not sit there and go, a judgment in these cases is often the adjective before the noun, the painting. So you could talk about the fantastic painting, and that would be your judgment. It's a fantastic painting. You could talk about the sad painting, the existential painting. That judgment is what Stella wants you to look at, because the painting, in this case, is bringing that out. What you're supposed to do is ask why. Why was that your thought?